But before we start with the talking tree, I would like to zoom out a little bit and talk about actually how to decipher a tree as a screen, you could say, as a potential interface. It's actually quite hard to understand for us humans. And thus I will give a brief overview of a project that we just recently finished. That is a technology foundation in Berlin, so it's a non-profit organization working in the field of governmental consultation, open source, open data since more than 30 years now. And we have some principles, mainly, like I said, using open data and open source code, so it's kind of, you could say, usable through other cities. This is also what happens to some of our projects already. And based on that, there's some projects that we initialized. Some of you might know the CityLab in Berlin, which is a department of the Technology Foundation itself. It's the Innovation Lab of Berlin. But then we have also other projects where we work together with the government. And I want to give a brief introduction. So, but before we start actually a project, we always start to find a problem because, if you start to find a solution, you might end up with a solution that nobody needs, like it was the case with the mouse talk, a mouse that you can also use as a phone, but there was no real need for that. So we try to avoid that by having an interdisciplinary team that actually tries to always find the perfect fit of the solution problem pair. So imagine in the case of AI, if you're thinking about all the methods of AI and application fields, if you combine them in a smart way and start off testing them over and over again and starting to reiterate, you might maybe find some innovation potential. And this is what we did with quantified trees, where we tried to actually, what it said, quantify the trees, but we didn't do it alone. We did it with an AI company and the greenery department of Berlin Mitte and another greenery department. There's 12 in Berlin actually. But altogether they were funded by the Federal Ministry of Environment of Germany, and we tried to figure out how we can actually do something about this situation. This is what a lot of people encounter during their walks through the streets. You look up into the crown and you're like, what is the tree trying to tell me, right? I don't understand, because as humans we don't have this, we don't get the cues basically. But it definitely doesn't look healthy. So in order to understand the problem better, we went down the rabbit hole from a very broad perspective to a very narrow one, starting of course with the climate stripes. I think all of you know them, but the message is pretty much important. It's getting hotter and there is some unusual patterns in the rainfall and precipitation, which is causing to the stress of the trees. But more than that, we went down a little bit further. We were looking for actually how can you combat those effects on the trees, because you can build sponge cities, you can maybe even plant more climate-resistant trees, or you can also water them. And this is what is already happening in Berlin quite a lot. Actually, there's some trucks like that. There's people also passing by with other smaller trucks, but basically what it does is they're watering the trees not based on the trees' needs. It's more like following standards that say each 2 weeks put on 200 liters of water, even though it's raining. Sometimes it's even raining, but that's another story. We thought maybe there is a more, let's say, interactive way to foster the activities. And this is why we then built an app at CityLab Berlin. It's with a screen, I know, but it's a participatory tree watering app where we mapped all the trees coming from the open data tree cadastry on a map. You can click on them, you can adopt them, you can water them. And everything was fine until another person raised over and over the question, so how much water is actually enough? Right? Is it like 50 liters? Tomorrow it's maybe 80. Maybe they don't need any water at all because the roots are quite deep, especially when it comes to old trees. So this is where we went even further to understand the problem, and we're looking in other existing solution domains. It's what I mentioned already. is those, let's say, scientific books and papers, which is the standards of any kind of arborist, basically, looking for rules to follow. So not really user-centric or tree-centric, you could say, and very wasteful in the means of water. Then we were looking for some actually existing transpiration models that you can find in the agriculture field, where they basically try to water their crops to increase the yields. But the problem there is that it's not applicable for the city, because the city ground, like under the surface is very diverse. You have to imagine some rubble, you have to imagine some pipes. There's a lot of indifferent things. It's not as smooth as it would be in an agriculture context. So not really useful for us. And then there is another approach using sensor data that is actually measuring the moisture of the soil. There's just one problem. We have a lot of hardware, and if you would install a sensor at each tree, it's very expensive and it's not sustainable. But generally speaking, it's working, and the authorities, not just in Berlin but also in other German cities, they use it quite a lot to monitor their trees. But we thought, that's interesting, maybe we can set foot here and tried this solution where we were actually installing some sensors in Berlin. They were supposed to measure the soil moisture in 3 different depths and even at the core of the roots, to see whether the water is actually going all the way through, even though it didn't rained a lot. But anyhow, we had like 100 sensors in total in 2 districts, and I think a time around like 1.5 years to make sense of it. And this is what it looked like at the end. Just to give you an idea, you can basically see, it's German, I'm sorry, it means drought. You can basically see when the graph is increasing, it means that the tension is also increasing, meaning that the roots need to suck more from the soil in order to extract the water. And this is what was a great determinant to actually see when you have to water the tree or not. So going from there, we were like, cool, we can use AI to build a forecasting model that is predicting how much water a tree needs, and thus creating a tree-centering irrigation model. So first step for AI is, of course, a lot of data. Luckily, in Germany, we have a lot of open source data, and we were using a lot of those open source or open data sources. Mainly the tree cadastry, but also the weather data, irrigation, temperature, solar radiation, wind speed, all of the above, plus the shading calculated on the height profile of the buildings and the trees around to see if there's a lot of transpiration going on or not. And with all those data points, including the sensor data coming together, we were actually able to train our machine learning model using all those input nodes as determined in order to calculate an nowcast, basically looking at the water supply of today, plus a forecast for the next 2 weeks based on the weather data. And it's a pretty simple idea. You basically take the sensor data with some tree data, you train them, you create a profile, and you know, for example, that your 4-year-old oak at this point with this shadow and this district needs that amount of water or has that kind of soil tension. And then you compare the whole person, basically tree persona, with the rest of the tree data and forecast it for the rest. So basically you find similar trees. This is how we created the AI. But generally speaking, for me personally, it's important to mention that screening the AI, basically putting it on on a higher level, not just like pulling it out from the paper or from your screen, but also like apply it in the real world is what makes it actually useful, because otherwise it will be just a theory basically. This is why inherently there were 2 apps in our project that we programmed, one for the citizens where they can inform themselves about the current status, but not too scientifically, and the more important one is the one where the authorities work with, so they can actually log in, they can filter for the trees, they can filter for the soil tension, they can see which of my filtered trees are actually the most endangered and how will it develop for the next 2 weeks in order to then plan their routes, how to water the trees. Yeah, quickly at the end, I mean, it's not a surprise, the tree data was quite determined. Since there is only sensor data for only young trees, you can see that in our samples that we only have the data for those trees, so you can say that kind of the prediction of the older trees is not accurate enough, but also not important as it turned out, because you don't need to water them that much. And what was also interesting is that, as you see here, the determinants and their basically feature value, that all the waterings, it's the last 2 lines here, are actually not really important because also lack of data in our interpretation. What was quite important is the shading index. That was a surprise, and it's also a good outcome for the authorities to see. What's up next is that we will collaborate with the Sensible CityLab from MIT to use their sensor. They build it in order to kind of put it on a car, drive through the streets, and not just see where the trees are standing, we know that, but also, most importantly, use a multispectral sensor in order to extract the frequency of the light to then determine whether the tree is healthy or not. And together with the vitality index of a tree, you can basically better assess if it needs water or not. And yeah, I mean, this is basically everything I want to tell you about the project. I think I will skip those parts because the most important one is still coming with the talking tree. But what I wanted to highlight is, I think for this project it was very important, and in general to have a creative analysis first, and then have a simple AI. But don't use this general purpose technology and try to fix something, but really like have a deep dive into the problem first and then find a smart solution. And how to make sense of city and trees with general purpose AI, I think Henriette will show you now.
Maybe I just continue. Do you have any questions?
Just after Henriette.
That the whole way, but in a creative way, and actually being there. And I want to show you a few examples, and now this seems like a step back from very fancy high-tech technologies, but I guess that's the whole purpose why we are here, also to re-challenge the complexity of things. We talked about it earlier. And I want to show you one example, which is called the Keats pulse. So Keats is about the district, and pulse is like the heartbeat, so the heartbeat of the neighborhood. And what you do here is you take a string, like a woolen string, and you go through these boards to answer certain questions. And how it emerged is we wanted to gather different information from people about, are they from the neighborhood, how old are they, what do they do, and what do they actually care about. So one question, for example, is what would you be more likely to give up? Green space, parking lot, bike lane? And what do you use most frequently in your everyday life with the same answers? And we first did that with tablets laying around, and no one really engaged with it, of course, because people don't really want to stop and do another survey in their everyday life. But putting up this, we didn't even really had to merge people to it, but already after 2 days, there were so many of these strings because people, we said it earlier, they want to touch things, they want to see visible things, they want to engage with things. So we watched so many people from young to old to actually do this and be happy to have their data displayed openly. That was another topic we spoke about earlier. How transparent is the data that we give away and whatever. This is a very basic model of it, but it's a very effective way to showcase it. And also another point we mentioned, or you mentioned earlier, was to actually speak about local topics, like what do we care about, participation processes, what to engage in a conversation. And we watched so many people while doing it, questioning themselves, stopping by, speaking about it. So yeah, that was a nice way of data physicalization. And another example, very easy and low barrier in terms of information and data was, or is this example, which is called the sealed bars. So the district that we were in, there were different climate adaptations going on as measures. And because of all the sealed surfaces, the streets were rearranged, parking lots were removed, green spaces. And I don't know how it is here, but in Germany, when you lose your parking spots, people get loud and people get angry and people want to get involved. And here we had this very easy physicalization of data, what sealed surfaces even are in the city. So here you can see you have these blue little things. At the end of each day, they were all around the ground, but where they should go is in these 3 bars. And you see 0% ceiling, 50% ceiling, 100% ceiling. And you can go through and see how much of the water actually, which displays the rainwater, goes down to the groundwater based on the ceiling level. And this was a very easy and effective way to display climate adaptation measures on the streets, what it means, what the effect is, so to make data more tangible in that sense, and also for people to understand what it means. So there was a grandma, and she was very, very mad in the beginning when she came there, mad about her parking lots. And then once she did it, she looked and she was like, oh, so sealed surfaces are really bad. And I was like, yeah, not kind of, yes. So yeah, that's an effective way to actually display information and data. From this more so information and data display now to urban AI, also in the CityLab style. How to use existing generative AI to have an actual impact. So another thing we do is we have the Kiez-Visionen. Yes, we play a lot. Sorry? Yeah. Even bigger on the big screen. Maybe not better. We also use Urbanist AI, it was mentioned earlier. So the 2 other examples I showed, it was about gathering data and displaying data in this urban planning process. But an important thing is also to understand the city as an interface again and to see what's going on. Why would I even want a transformation process to go on? And what we do in this workshop is, for example, here with the school class, we walk around the area first and we kind of gather what would you wish to be here instead of the street or whatever. So they collect their ideas, they map them maybe where this could be, and then we tap into generative AI just as a tool to enhance this and to actually visualize these ideas. So the school class was sitting here and it was so beautiful to see how excited they got about these ideas being visualized. And one anecdote to share about this is we were there for 2 weeks. And the next day, parents came by hourly and asked, so when do these new trees come by here? Or when does this and this happen? And we're like, no, this is just an early process of the urban planning process. But it showed how excited the children came home talking about these ideas because they had these visions in their head. To use AI in that context to actually visualize the ideas, or also as a brainstorming tool when you don't have ideas yet. You have data, you have information to get inspired. And another example, very basic and low-key in that sense also, speaking about future visions and visualizing ideas, are the idea machines. Also in the CityLab context, those are 3 cubes for different topics. So it could be public administration, participation, and how to live in energy. And you throw them around, and then whatever is on top, there's motion sensors in, this gets sent, and out of this, the future vision creates. So it's a very basic sensor ChatGPT model, but people love to play with it, and also we observed how they explained it to each other. So it wasn't necessarily, someone earlier said, it's not about the outcome of the game, but about the process of the game. So here it was more so about engaging with technologies and understanding the technology while doing it. So a very low threshold dive into different technologies and into speaking about future vision of streets. 2 minutes, okay, because now I get to the tree pot finally. Yeah, this is another part of the CityLab where so we gather data, you know about climate adaptation measures, whatever, but you have future visions, but you also want to understand why am I doing this? Why is it important for someone else? So the city is not only people or the places, but it's the interfaces. We spoke about this earlier. So imagine you walk along the street and from the side someone says, it's really hot today. No, isn't it? I'm really thirsty. And you look around and it's not someone complaining. In Germany, people love to complain about the weather, but it would be a tree. How would this work? We have the tree bot, which is a portable chatbot for trees. And based on sensor values, I get to that in a second how it works. It tells you how it's doing and what it needs. So you can actually engage with the tree itself. And earlier someone said cities are forests of symbols, I think. But cities are actually also urban forests. We just sometimes forget how many trees there are in the city. And Julia said we kind of lost track of understanding the science that they're trying to tell us. So what would be an easier way of understanding the science they want to tell us, but by voice? And we mentioned that also earlier, that voice and noise is kind of the most or the strongest interface we can use, because it's not something we look at, or it's just a different screen like the hand that we're using, but it's actually there speaking to us. So we bring the urban nature back into the conversation by giving it voice, so you can on an eye level literally talk to the tree again and engage in what the tree may need. And the setup is, we have, just here as a quick introduction, but we can explain it on the spot. We have this portable chat box, a microphone, the sensors inside the box, the microphone here also as part of the stick. And we used it, before I get to that, last week actually we explained it in Berlin Science Week. I get to that in a second. Where I quickly want to show you these two.
I find joy in sharing the importance of trees, especially on a warm day like today at 32 degrees Celsius.
Oops.
I find joy in sharing the importance of trees, especially on a warm day like today at 32 degrees Celsius. Trees are vital for our city's climate and well-being. What's your opinion on how we can support more green spaces in urban areas?
It's remarkable that tree could speak, as it's obviously dead, but you get the idea of it. And just another video.
Grazie mille. È fantastico che tu apprezzi la natura. I nostri alberi sono così.
Her reaction was so surprised, or so pleasantly surprised, because the tree responded in Spanish when it started in English, and then the tree understood which language it was speaking. And just here for a setting, and then we actually get to it. It was very nice to observe, because Berlin Science Week there were a lot of scientists, also very serious scientists, some institute and whatever, and after a few minutes there was a huge group gathering around this tree with the little box, actually almost standing in line to speak with the tree. And this one woman was very engaged and kept asking questions. And then a man, kind of strict looking man, tapped her on the shoulder and was like, may I talk to the tree now? And I think this was so nice to observe how we bring back respect to nature again in that sense, because once he had the microphone, he was kind of shyly looking at me and I was like, say hi. And he was like, hi. And then engaging with the tree, and yeah, this just brings, I think, back urban nature back to the conversation, also in political debates, and to stay in the loop of a conversation. And another feedback was, why does it ask so many questions? I have so many questions for the tree, and I think that's nice, because usually when we walk through the streets and we're smongies and we're on our phones, we don't really observe, or we have to look up things to get the information, and here people are curious again to have this information in a different way. So, you may talk to the tree now. What question
you start, maybe.
do you have? Maybe you start.
Maybe I start. Let me first start the script. Okay, what's the question, right?
Just general conversation starter.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Hello, dear tree. How are you feeling today? It's a lovely day in Paris. What did you do? See. Next one, maybe? You want to ask a question?
Let's see what it says to
Okay.
you.
See.
Ah, a delightful 22 degrees Celsius today. I've been enjoying the gentle breeze and the vibrant autumn leaves. It's the perfect day to appreciate the vital role trees play in keeping our city cool and healthy. How do you like to spend your time outdoors in this beautiful weather?
Mais je suis pas sûre, mais est-ce que tu as une arbre favori?
And like, just a question, is it associated to a specific tree? Or?
Right now it's a birch, 42 years old.
Okay,
Ah,
okay.
les feuilles d'automne. J'adore les teintes dorées et cuivrées qui embellissent notre paysage. Mais en tant que vieux sage, je dois dire que chaque saison a sa beauté unique et son importance pour notre écosystème. Quelle est ta saison préférée et pourquoi?
Est-ce que tu communiques avec d'autres arbres?
So he asked, do you communicate with other
Il
trees?
semble que le vent souffle un peu fort aujourd'hui, n'est-ce pas? Les arbres comme moi apprécient cette fraîcheur, surtout en automne. Dites-moi, avez-vous déjà pensé à la façon dont les arbres aident à purifier l'air que nous respirons?
Okay, are people treating you well?
Oh, I must say, the people around here are quite caring. They often admire my leaves and enjoy the shade I provide. But sometimes, a little more awareness about the vital role of trees in our ecosystem would be wonderful. How do you think we can encourage more people to appreciate and protect trees in urban environments?
I don't like trees. They get in the way of my car. What should I do? Silence.
I understand that cars need space, but trees play a crucial role in making our cities livable. They provide shade, improve air quality, and even help reduce noise pollution. Perhaps consider the benefits trees bring to our environment and how they can coexist with urban infrastructure. What if we found a way to make those benefits?